Hello?
You like scary movies?
Yeah, I love scary movies.
What's your favorite scary movie?
That's a great question. In December 1996, director Wes Craven unleashed his newest horror to the world. Scream is a slasher movie, but it's no Friday the 13th. Instead, the film acts as a self-aware commentary on the tropes of the genre. But what are those tropes? And how did Craven get to this point in his career? Well, let's take a brief dive backwards and explore those questions a little further. Wes Craven is a master of horror, having directed the classics The Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, and of course the original Nightmare on Elm Street. The Elm Street franchise quickly grew out of Craven's control. While he both wrote and directed the original and co-wrote the third, he was primarily absent from the franchise. This all changed, however, with Wes Craven's new Nightmare. The Nightmare on Elm Street franchise had ended, and so the series creator returned, bringing Freddy back to his pure horror roots and away from the comedic character he turned into over the course of the seemingly endless stream of sequels.
Yes! Super Freddy!
By this point, Craven had directed more than a dozen horror movies and was clearly very well versed in the genre. When New Nightmare hit screens in 1994, viewers were expecting something much closer to the original classic. What they got, however, was something altogether different. New Nightmare is what many consider to be a prototype for Scream. Not only is it meta, being set in the quote-unquote real world where Freddy, from the fictional movies, comes to life, but it also regularly plays with conventions of the genre, and particularly of the Nightmare series. It's a brilliant movie and definitely worth watching if you're a fan of Wes Craven's other works. Knowing he was onto something, Wes Craven got started on a brand new feature, one which would eventually spawn 5 sequels, a surprisingly good TV show, and revitalize the entire genre. It's hard to describe just how huge of an impact Scream had upon its release. It brought slashers back to the forefront with a whole host of popular imitators. It set the tone for horror for the next decade. Horror had to be funny, young, and most importantly, self-aware. A trend that only truly faded out when the spread of mid-2000s horror reboots took over in its place. Written by Kevin Williamson and originally titled Scary Movie, a title which would later be adopted by a parody series whose first entry would primarily be a riff on the Scream franchise. The film combines black comedy and whodunit mystery with the violence of the slasher genre to satirize the clichés of said genre, popularized in films such as Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Craven's own A Nightmare on Elm Street. Scream was considered unique at the time of its release for featuring characters aware of real-world horror movies and openly discuss the clichés that the film attempted to subvert. It's generally considered to be one of the best horror movies of all time, but how does it hold up all these years later? After all, the genre has changed massively over that time, and so has audience opinion. With the framing of the industry as it stands today, does Scream still manage to be as clever as it once was, and is it actually scary? Let's find out. The film opens with a phone call.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Wow, what an original idea. As we're introduced to Drew Barrymore's Casey, a young, flirty girl home alone. She talks to this mysterious stranger on the phone for a few minutes until things get a little too kinky.
You hang up on me again, I'll gut you like a fish, understand?
The caller reveals he's got some darker intentions than Casey was hoping for, and before you know it, her boyfriend's been gutted on the porch. A well-crafted chase scene follows as she makes a sprint for safety, but before Casey can make it to her parents, the killer catches her, and what follows is a pretty brutal kill to start off this iconic series. At the time, audiences were shocked that Barrymore was killed right off the bat. Not only was she one of the biggest names in the movie, but she's also the only star on the poster. This established that no one was safe. Anyone could die at any point, and for the most part, the film and the series stay true to that promise. Neve Campbell's Sidney Prescott is just a normal teenage girl. She writes her diary on the computer, she's dating her high school sweetheart Billy, and she loves the Indigo Girls. Oh, and her mother was murdered a year ago. Sidney, and most of the world, believe that her mother was killed by Cotton Weary, portrayed by that guy who played Sabretooth from X-Men Origins. The only one who believes he's innocent is Gale Weathers, portrayed by Courtney Cox, best known for her role in the American situational comedy Cougar Town. Sidney's friend group at school consists of boyfriend Billy Loomis, couple Tatum Riley and Stu Macher, portrayed by Shaggy himself, Matthew Lillard, and film fanatic Randy Meeks. This film doesn't give us a second to relax, however, as before you know it, Ghostface is attacking Sidney in her own home. But luckily, she's able to call for help using the absolute peak of modern technology. Ghostface disappears, and some unfortunate timing gets Billy locked up for the night, and placed squarely as the police's main suspect. This, of course, includes Deputy Dewey, who primarily serves as the comic relief for the series, and one of the few consistent leads. Since we're here at the station, it's no surprise that reporter Gale Weathers and her cameraman Kenny are out for a story. But instead of sticking to her namesake, she's instead getting an exclusive with the victim, and getting some promotion for her upcoming book.
I'll send you a copy.
Oh, so that's where Mass Effect got it from. Courtney Cox, who was starring in the sitcom Friends at the time, approached the production to pursue the role. She was interested in playing a bitch character to offset her nice Friends image. It was that nice perception that had the production team uninterested in her as a candidate. But after months of lobbying, Cox was able to convince the studio, and the rest is history. Deputy Dewey eats a donut for breakfast. I love this movie. The next day at school, Billy acts like a dick, Principal Himbry comes down hard on a couple pranksters, Sidney has a rough time in the bathroom, Gale shamelessly flirts with Dewey, starting a relationship that would find its way into the real world, and all the teens prepare for an all-out party going on later that night. Once school's over though, things take a darker turn. Mr. Himbry gets accosted by mysteriously ringing bells, knocking doors, and Wes Craven himself doing a very on-the-nose Nightmare on Elm Street reference.
Not your friend.
For Ghostface finishes off the beloved principal. Sucks, man. I actually really liked the character. Usually people in power in horror films are just assholes who don't care for the people they're meant to protect. But Himbry actually cared about the pain his students were going through, and the danger they faced. And so he set out measures to help ensure the safety of those in his school. He's just another way this film subverts expectations, and as per usual, it's excellently done. At the VHS rental store, again, the peak of modern technology, Randy goes a little overboard with his movie references.
Everybody's a suspect!
Well, probably not the victims. It's here that Billy and Stu start to give off some real obvious serial killer vibes, but I'm sure that won't be important later. Everything closes down for a town-wide curfew. Sidney and Tatum do some shopping. Dewey and his chief both indulge in their vices. And before you know it, it's party time. Everyone rolls up to this genuinely awesome-looking house, including Gale, who arrives in her own personal mystery machine, a vehicle Stu would no doubt be jealous of. The party's going strong, so Tatum goes to the garage to grab some more beer from the fridge. It's here that she's cornered by Ghostface. A few comedic falls later, and Tatum attempts to make her escape through the dog flap, a situation the iconic killer takes advantage of by sending the door up. The soon-to-be victim is unable to escape though because, boobs? And we're treated to one of the film's most memorable kills. Back inside, things between Sidney and Billy start to get X-rated, and Randy lays out the rules of the genre.
Number 1, you can never have sex. No! Big no-no!
The news of Principal Himbry's death reaches the partygoers, so they all make their exit in an attempt to see what's going on. Writer Kevin Williamson included the death of character Principal Himbry based on input by producers. and in doing so inadvertently solved a problem in the script's finale. Williamson had struggled to find a reason for several extraneous characters to leave so that the killer could attack, finally determining that the announcement of the discovery of Himbry's corpse would serve to remove the non-essential characters, who decide to take a look at the dead body and leave the party, enabling the start of the murders. Gale and Dewey flirt a little, then flirt a lot. Billy starts acting like a real sussy baka after sex. Guys, I'm pretty sure he's the killer. Or not. Sidney manages to escape the house and get to the news van, an action which gets Kenny the cameraman his throat slit.
Oh my god, they killed Kenny!
As a little aside on his death here, it's important to note that this character has really been used as the butt of jokes so far, but in his final moments, upon realizing he's about to die, he looks at Sidney and points to a secret exit to the van and mutters "door," all while blocking the killer from being able to reach her. They award him a little moment of heroism that displays his true character besides what we see in this snippet of time. Not only is that a great bit of writing, but again, it's a subversion of what we might expect from a comic relief character in a slasher film. Sidney makes her escape, Gale crashes her van in the ditch, Dewey stumbles out and collapses, seemingly dead. Sidney manages to grab his gun and, not knowing who to trust when Stu and Randy appear blaming each other, decides to lock the both of them outside. Billy comes crashing down the stairs, somehow still clinging to life, and, after taking the gun from Sidney, opens the door letting in Randy, who continues to claim that Stu's gone mad.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Hey, that line's from Psycho.
Anthony Perkins, Psycho.
Yeah, I know. I just said that. Billy and Stu reveal themselves to be the killers and proceed to describe their plans to blame the whole thing on Sidney's father. But before they can finish the job, a distraction gives Sidney a chance to escape.
If Billy's got one, the police are on their way. What are you gonna tell them?
Peer pressure.
Billy goes in search of his would-be victim, but all he finds is a shockingly sharp umbrella. With Billy down for the count, Sidney grapples with Stu, who ends up taking a TV to the face. He would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you meddling kids. One last fight ends with the final serial killer taking a bullet to the chest. Watch out, this is the part where the supposedly dead killer comes back for one last scare.
Not in my movie.
This horror classic closes with Dewey being carted off in an ambulance towards future sequels as Gale Weathers makes a closing report on the murders that swept this small town for the first, but far from final time. Scream is brilliant. At its core, a perfect blend of murder mystery and gory slasher, filled with believable and not so believable characters who are nonetheless massively entertaining and endearing. After 25 years, not only does the movie continue to receive seemingly endless praise, but the fascination with the franchise continues with yet another big blockbuster sequel releasing this week. Of course, people love Ghostface, whose menacing voice by Roger L. Jackson helps the already frightening and funny design remain the icon it is today. But the real reason these movies have always succeeded is the characters both on and off the screen. Sidney, Dewey, and Gale feel real. They develop and grow, but always stay true to who they are across the series. Unlike Freddy in Nightmare on Elm Street, which started as pure gothic horror and slowly moved into the realm of self-parody and pure comedy, Scream remains true to itself, changing and evolving, but at its heart always being a mix of tongue-in-cheek humour and genuine genre thrills. The original has aged, of course. Watching it today, it certainly feels like a time capsule of the mid-90s, but there's nothing wrong with that. Cinema changes over time, and what audiences look for in their entertainment changes with it. Is it perfect? No, but it's a wonderfully funny time that still manages to be incredibly tense and frightening when it wants to be. Some people adore this movie, and others don't. For me, Scream will always remind me of my college years, where I was addicted to watching it and Donnie Darko and Friday the 13th on repeat. I love this film. Unlike Nightmare on Elm Street, Wes Craven always paid close attention to the series until his death in 2015. Even then, work on a fifth entry was already underway. That movie would eventually evolve to become the brand new Scream, a pseudo-reboot sequel in cinemas now. There's never been a more important time to support your local theatre. I'll be seeing Scream this weekend with some close friends, and if you love this series, I urge you to do the same. Next week, I'm going to be taking a look at a childhood favourite of mine, the original Ice Age movie, just in time for the release of the new Disney Plus exclusive, The Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild. Thank you all so much for watching. Of course, if you enjoyed, I'd very much appreciate if you could drop this video a like, and if you want to stay tuned with everything that I'm making here on the channel, you can hit the subscribe button down below to stay in touch. But until next time, I hope you have a beautiful day and an even brighter tomorrow. See ya.